Today, my guest is Daniel Lusko.
You know, really, the First Amendment, our freedom of religion or freedom of conscience, is arguably the basis for all other freedoms.
Welcome to Heritage of Truth. Today, my guest is Daniel Lusko. Welcome, Daniel.
Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Daniel is the writer, producer, and director of the movie Persecuted. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that movie?
Well, it's a movie. You just watched it and you've got the fire in your eyes about the film, and that's really the heart of what your show is about, as you've described it to me, is standing up for the truth and having a heritage around that. Is really the main character of the movie, John Luther. He's an evangelist who is committed to the gospel truth, just preaching the simple gospel day in and day out. But what happens in the story is this government and institution in this fictional story has, in the interest of national security and diversity, designed a legislation called the Faith and Fairness Act, which sounds very good. It's to bring all religions together and kind of hope for peace and tranquility. But really what lies underneath it in this story is very sinister, because our First Amendment rights, our freedom of conscience, to be able to choose, to have that set apart for God or whatever we believe, it gets into that. And for this man, though he knows the senator and the people who are behind the legislation very closely, and they kind of try to twist his arm to endorse the legislation and get behind it. And he stands up against it, and he says, no, I'm going to continue preaching the simple gospel truth. And it's a choice that all of us really have to make on a daily basis, small or large. Here in America, it seems small. Over around the world, to stand up for the gospel, it's not a simple decision. But this man stands up against it, and as a result, those who are behind it, who have claimed to be his friends, the senator and others, frame him.
Yeah.
They frame him for murder. And it happens kind of in the darkness of night, and it goes and so what it looks like on the next day on the news is that this evangelist has murdered an innocent girl. And so it really defames the Christian reputation at a crucial time when this legislation is being passed, which gives them more momentum, because this guy is now incredible. Yeah. And so now this man, this Billy Graham type evangelist, goes on the run and makes a decision. He's aided by former U.S. Senator Fred Thompson, who plays his father in the movie, encourages him to pursue the truth at whatever cost. And he goes on the run to prove the truth and to expose those who are behind this, who have lied in the interest of gaining more power and gaining a hook in the American people to control them. The ultimate hook, really, because many people who I've talked with, like Jay and Jordan Sekulow of the ACLJ and others who are standing up for persecuted people around the world, have said that, really the First Amendment, our freedom of religion or freedom of conscience, is arguably the basis for all other freedoms in a way, because our founding fathers really wanted our conscience to be free, and really it allows us to have that relationship with God, which is sacred. And to try and get a hook in that and take that away is a very dangerous thing. And so in making this movie and telling this story, what we've seen and what I've described with even some of your own staff of Heritage is just that really that's something that we have to make a choice for at the end of the movie. When the movie ends, it allows you to really decide, what would I do if I was in this situation?
It certainly does.
Yeah.
I won't say anything to give away the ending, but at the end, I just thought, the way you ended it was compelling, because it leaves us with having to think, what would I do in that situation?
All of us, myself included. And I continue to face that question even coming in here today, because God forbid that a real legislation like that would be passed. And what's interesting is, no matter what side of the political aisle you stand on, this movie doesn't stand for any political agenda. It stands only for the gospel truth and reserving your freedom of conscience for God. And that if you are committed to that, no one can take that away from you unless you give it to them. No one can take your heart from you unless you give it. And if you're so devoted to the truth or to the gospel or to whatever your belief system is, then no matter what persecution might come your way, whether it be an obstacle, whether it be what's happening with Saeed Abedini, the pastor
Mm-hmm.
who's in prison in Iran, who just for simply standing up for the gospel, he's been in prison for several years, and even now he's being used as leverage in the international dealings.
Mm-hmm.
But
And not just in prison, but they've withheld medical attention that
absolutely.
he's needed, medicines that he's needed.
But if you read the
and
letters
then
of this
tortured
guy, he's still
Yeah.
free.
Yeah.
They can't take that away from him.
No.
It's just like we'll call the apostles these
Mhm.
people, and that's what I think us in America. We have such security. We live so nicely
Mhm.
that I think we have been so dependent in a way upon those freedoms
Mhm.
that if we generally maybe have a fear of those things being taken away, and that's really what I think the movie can do. Is it can open people's eyes that if you really are committed to that which is eternal, all of this other stuff can come or go, and it doesn't really matter. That's the awakening.
I've known a couple of people who have been in different parts of the world as missionaries, and they have said that, like Eastern Europe before the Iron Curtain fell, used to pray for Americans to suffer persecution because a persecuted church is a strong church.
That's right.
Yeah,
I've heard that.
and I've heard that in Asia people are now praying for America to have persecution, the Christians to have persecution, so that we would be stronger.
So that we would be stronger in our
Mhm.
faith, and that's something
Mhm.
that certainly can happen. And so whatever really comes our way, whether it's through this or through that, I think that we have a responsibility to our children, to our grandchildren, to relay, to pass this baton that you talk about, this heritage of truth,
Mhm.
so that's what they're committed to. That's what
Right.
they're holding fast to. And so
No matter what the cost.
whatever they grow up, and I think that's something
Yeah.
that really hasn't happened by and large across America today. The church has kind of been melded in with the culture.
Mhm.
And these big churches and their big walls, and it's all wonderful, to be able to communicate the gospel with the current media and all of that stuff. That's great, but it can also be a trap, can it?
Mhm.
I've grown up in a big church. I'm a pastor's kid myself. I grew up in at a large one, and it's amazing to have those tools at our disposal. But it's just we got to be careful not to worship those as idols, to allow them to be distractions from the true God, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, how long did it take you to make this movie?
6 years.
6 years.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's
Now,
been
not the
quite a
actual
journey.
filming, though.
That's right. No, that would be a long. That's like Lord of the Rings, But no, I actually started writing it 6 years ago, and I did
Okay.
over 50 drafts of the screenplay.
Wow.
I spent a long time.
Now that's a
focus groups.
disciplined writer. Very good.
And something, I really never saw myself as a writer. I always saw myself really as a director. I made several documentary films before this. But when the conviction came to me, this was the first. I've now written 4 feature-length screenplays. I've produced 2 or 3 movies and 7 documentary films. But when the story came, it was so sharp and so visceral to me when I woke up one morning and I had chills running down my spine, and I there was a creative voice inside of me. I can't definitively say I believe I heard the voice of God. What that actually means, I was inspired to write this story, and I believe that it was something that could happen in America, and certainly a compelling story. And whatever that force was that drove me beyond unbelievable obstacles over the next years, being rejected by every major studio and every opportunity that I would hope for to fund it or get it made, pass by, I kind of just heard what they call, kind of like a still small voice just saying, keep going, it's worth pursuing, keep doing this. And it kept me on the road to finally get the resources necessary to do what I felt was to make it on the level with other major Hollywood movies. And we ended up getting an incredible cast. We've had people, I've had Larry King interview me, I've had, Fox News and Hollywood Reporter and Variety, all those people come and watch the movie and say, there's a real compelling message and a timely story to it, but it also plays as like a Hitchcockian thriller with actual respected actors. Guys like James Remar from Dexter and Fred Thompson from Die Hard and Law and Order, and guys like Dean Stockwell and Bruce Davison, who rarely, if ever, have done an ever faith-based movie, but what they were attracted to, which is interesting, is the conflict of the story. Because if you take this, out of the whole Christian world and set the story as a man who's framed for standing up for what he believes, and this huge tyrannical institution or government, it still plays as a compelling story.
Yeah.
And so what's amazing is I feel that all of those components to it, those kind of universal components of a story, have been used to make something that people are describing as the future of faith entertainment. Who knows if it is? We'll see what fans actually think about it when it comes out.
The 6 years, I'm wondering if maybe it isn't just because it's God's timing, because I think if persecution is going to come, we're certainly closer to it now than we were 6 years ago.
Could be.
So
it could be that that events have caught up. It certainly has added this value to the story and to the movie, because people don't have to suspend their disbelief the way they did 5-6 years ago. When I'd show people the screenplay, they would say, could this really happen? I mean, come on, really? This is America. And now people read it with a whole different perspective.
Yeah, because now we see it could happen.
They're connecting the dots.
Yeah.
And so I think that's been a huge catalyst to the movie, and timing is just perfect. So on July 18th, it'll be released in 600 theaters nationwide. The trailer's already playing in theaters all across the country, and we hope that it just is a wildfire, and people really vote with their box office dollars, because we live in such an entertainment-driven society. We've seen other people, in other faith-based movies coming out this year, and it's great to see the success. What makes, I think, Persecuted unique is because it is singularly focused on a man standing up for the gospel no matter what comes at him. And I want to see how many people will come out and support that. It'll be interesting. I hope we're encouraged.
Yeah, I hope so too. I think it's really important for believers to support these faith-based films, because, for one thing, we need stuff like this in the entertainment industry.
Let's face it, it shapes in a large way the society around us and the minds of our kids.
It certainly does. Yeah. So thank you so much, Daniel, for being our guest. Where can people find information about you and the movie online?
Persecutedmovie.com, and you can find information on, you just punch in your zip code and find out the theaters near you, or you can, even if you're part of a church or a city group or an organization, even a small one, you can make a commitment to 50 tickets or a few tickets to bring a group out, to guarantee that Persecuted will come to your city. So we hope people aren't intimidated by that. We'd really appreciate people being encouraged, because that's a way you can proactively be a part of making this a movement across the country. So persecutedmovie.com.
Okay, thank you so much for being our guest.
Thank you for having me. It was a privilege.